it shows 24 minutes.
Okay.
Hi, welcome to another edition of Meet the Author. Tonight we have Senator Terry Gerratana. Terry served in the Connecticut House of Representatives from 1993 to 2003, serving as co-chair of the Human Services Committee. While serving in the House, she assisted in passing the Husky Children's Health Care Bill and strengthening the CONPACE program. She also worked on programs intended to improve health care for mothers and infants. Gerratana also served as commissioner of the State Election Enforcement Commission from 2007 to 2010. She has also served as ethics commissioner for New Britain, Connecticut. She has worked with the Junior League, the Klingberg Family Center, and the New Britain Berlin YMCA. But Terry is also an author, and she wrote this fantastic book called Santa Barbara Ceramic Design. You can hold that up. Established in 1976 by current director Raymond Marco, following 3 years developing the decorative process, Santa Barbara ceramic design arose less auspiciously than the Ohio potteries, no financial backing and no machinery beyond that available to ancient potters, wheel, kiln, brushes, and colorants. The company produced intricate, colorful, hand-painted flora and fauna designs on traditional pottery forms, primarily vases and table lamps. Although artistically aligned with turn-of-the-century art potteries, the techniques used were unique and developed within the studio. Vibrant glaze stains with wax emulsions were applied by brush over a graduated multicolor background, enhanced by elaborate sgraffito detailing on petals and leaves. In the early 1980s, a white stoneware body was incorporated to further brighten the color palette, and during later years, sgraffito was replaced by detailing with fine brush. Terry, why did you write this book, and how long did you take to write it?
Oh my, everyone asks me, well, why did you write this book? And of course, my background is in civics and public service, so this is a little bit of a digression. But for many, many years, I collected all kinds of potteries. I love modernist studio pottery. I also collect German pottery, English pottery, but my favorite has always been American art pottery. And when I discovered the pottery made by Santa Barbara Ceramic Design, I was so taken with it. The forms and the shapes, the colors, and the designs were so reminiscent of many of the traditional American art pottery companies that we know, as you mentioned, from Ohio, like Rookwood or Weller or Roseville. So it caught my eye. The other reason is, for many years, since the mid-1970s, my husband and I have been traveling to California with our family and by ourselves. We vacation there, so that has been going on for a number of decades. We just love the ocean side. We traveled to Big Sur, which is in the central part of the state. It's rugged, it's wild, it's a beautiful place to go and collect your thoughts, and so the two came together.
So that's why California, and I see you just answered why California pottery.
That's right. That's right.
You call it on your book that it's pottery from America's Riviera. I actually didn't know that. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. If you are lucky enough, if you will, to be able to travel to Santa Barbara, geographically it's located, of course, right on the coast of California, just a little bit south of the Central Coast area, north of Los Angeles. and the climate is very Mediterranean because of the way it is positioned geographically. In fact, if you go to the town, it's hard to think that north is really east and east is really south, and it's a little bit confusing until you get used to it because of the way that it is positioned. But also, the Riviera refers to the area that is traditionally called the Riviera in France, and that is because it's on the mountainside. And when you visit Santa Barbara, the homes go right into the foothills and up the side of the mountains in that area.
Very nice. Can you, this pottery, I was looking at it, it looks a little bit like Chinese brush painting. Can you show our audience and discuss a little bit about the pieces you brought us?
Oh, sure.
Absolutely beautiful.
The first thing that...
and the signatures.
Yep. The first thing that you should know about this piece, it's very heavy, and it was hand-thrown. This is not a traditional production piece. Santa Barbara went into production a little bit later on in the 1980s.
Now, not everybody, and I didn't, I know now, but because I did my research, not everybody knows what hand-thrown is. If you don't have any experience with pottery, can you tell us what hand-thrown is?
Hand-thrown is literally, in this case, probably taking 8 to 10 pounds of clay, and you wedge it and prepare it for the wheel. And then usually it's an electric wheel. You put it on the wheel, and throwing is not really, unless you consider throwing it onto the
like
wheel,
throwing bread
you
on the
don't
board.
you don't throw this. But you have that lump of clay in front of you, and the wheel starts to go, because I've thrown pottery myself. And when the wheel starts to go, you use your fingers and you raise the pot to the level that you want it to be. While it is turning, you can also make the throat a little more narrow or wider, the neck and the throat, and also the opening. The shoulders of the pot can be of a different size, or a little more narrow, a little more fuller. Also, I can tell that the thrower of this particular piece of pottery was Don Tate, because he was one of the potters for Santa Barbara Ceramic Design, and he would traditionally work with the heavy pieces of clay. He would throw bigger pieces, and if you look at the shape, it's a little more straight. The other main potter, Bob Osif, would throw, and I'm just going to grab this, I know it's nicely shown there, a little more bulbous. If you look at the shape of this pottery, it's a little wider here at the shoulders, and it really goes out, and it almost looks round. Also, the opening is a little wider and a little bit shorter, and this is just distinctive of Bob Osif, who would throw the other pots during the era that these were made,
let's
decorated.
Turn this around a little bit, because you have different flowers.
Oh, yes. This is called a bouquet. When there were different flowers decorated onto the pottery, it was referred to as a bouquet. And also, if you notice the rim here high on the shoulder just before the neck, you will see this decorated band, and that was referred to as collector series. So that had a specific designation also.
What type of flowers did they use?
Everything from asters to zinnias,
But I saw
without
that
exaggeration.
I saw the tiger lily was very popular.
Tiger lily was popular. The most popular and ubiquitous design was the iris, particularly the purple iris. One of the salesmen for the company would say, my most famous or popular pieces would be what he called a tall mini, which would be probably about 7 inches tall, about this height. I'll just bring that in there.
Tall mini.
And about this size, about this height, decorated with a nice gray or blue glaze with irises decorated on the front. So that was something that was so popular and recognizable when it was sold, enough so that the company actually took on an iris as their logo.
Okay.
Over time.
What did you say? This was an iris? I missed that part. This one right here?
No, this is a full-blown tulip.
That's a tulip.
And of course daffodil, and here's more tulip, and this is a narcissus.
Okay.
So this is just, before coming here, I just grabbed what I had and
That's
said.
okay. We might see it in the book a
Yeah,
little bit later.
and I like these too because you can see that the shapes are different, and you can see the difference too, the way the potters actually did the work. You did ask about the drawing, and yes, the inspiration for a lot of this work was Arthur Rackham, Aubrey Beardsley, a lot of the fine line drawing. But the use of the Japanese hake brush was that you could get very fine details when you drew and colored in. You can see lines here, perhaps the outline of the leaves, the outline of the petals. And this is very fine line drawing that they did. Earlier on, they actually did a sgraffito work. Yes, you can see it here also. Very much you can see the outline. Yeah, there we go. You can look at the pine needles there, and you can see that they are outlined. This particular cash bowl is very, very rare. I only know of a couple in existence, and it was Mary Favero, one of the decorators, who actually came up with the design. One thing that perhaps people would like to know, and that is that the artists came up with their own designs. This was an atelier. This was a working place. Every day people would come in, and everyone that I talked to was so in love with their job and so happy to be there. And they were all making maybe minimum wage, if that.
But they were happy.
They were so happy. For many of these artists, it was their first job in their profession.
And they stayed there for a while, you wrote in the book.
They came up with the designs. They would incorporate different techniques. This border work
So they had
here
some
was
freedom of design
unique.
in the shop.
Total freedom.
The studio.
Total freedom. It wasn't until about 1982-83, because of the economy, that the business actually went into what we call slip casts. They would use molds. They would use a master pot, if you will, or vase, and then they would make a mold from it, and then they would pour the liquid clay in there. It would harden. And
was there something unique about
looking to see if there's any, no, there's no lines on this, but you could see actually the lines, and they would employ what are called fettlers, and fettlers would come with an instrument to smooth the line that would be left from the mold production. But it was a lot cheaper.
And was there something unique about the techniques they used versus things that were being done outside the country, on other places in the country?
Well, this is a throwback, really, to another time. I have to tell you that, when we talk, or you talk with people to get to know them, part of my past is my mother-in-law, who was a china painter. And this is basically painting on china.
I was just going to say, I was before you mentioned that, I had been in Holland, where they did the china there. I forgot the name of the town, very famous town. But that reminded me that, and you just mentioned it. That's really...
The Porcelain Fleece Company, perhaps, which did wonderful decorations and painting on porcelain, usually. I just throw that out. That's a German and actually from the Netherlands company. They went... there's been a lot of production there, of course, on porcelain, and also the whiter stoneware, if you will. But I digress a little bit. But this is what I would call china painting. But it's also referred to as Majolica, because of the process. And that is the piece, after it was thrown, would become leather dry. And then there would be a bisque firing, leather hard. In other words, the clay would harden a little bit. Then they would fire it, do a bisque firing at a low temperature, and then the whole piece would be dipped in a base glaze. And that's what you do with Majolica work, so that you have a smooth, clear palette to paint upon. And that's exactly what was done with Santa Barbara Ceramic Design. It was very, very unique. If I may, I'd like to read from the book
Sure,
a little bit about the process or
Sure.
why they did it that
I was
way.
going to just ask you to do that. That's fantastic.
Okay.
Before you do that, tell us why you wrote the book.
Oh, I wrote the book because of all these things coming together, but I'll tell you it was a very simple reason. When I left the legislature in 2003, I did so to attend to family. My dad, unfortunately, was very ill and subsequently passed away. And that was in 2005, and I was looking for a project. And all along, you know, how things just come together.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned you were a photographer by...
That's right. I had photography. I
photography.
had worked as a medical photographer, actually employed. That wasn't my profession.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say that that I was licensed to do so, but I did a little bit of everything. I did actually production, newspaper, brochure production, a little bit of photography. You pick these skills up back in the day when you used the SLRs. And I was always very interested in art and the composition of art and what goes into it. So that everything just came together.
So.
It was just that I was looking for a project to do, talk to some friends. I have pottery friends all over the country, and they encouraged me also. They said, yeah, you should do it. You should really do it. And I said, I will.
Well, read a piece for us. First, show us maybe some pages from the book.
Oh, sure,
and then
sure.
Please read a piece.
Let me put this back here a little bit. We'll put that securely there. I like this passage in the book. This is written, and the words are from one of the artists, Doree Knight Hutchinson. She joined in 1978, and she said that the pots at that time were neither marked with the artist nor with the initials SBCD, and I'll show you that in just a few minutes. They were only marked with Ray, and Ray, of course, was the owner of the company, the first potter who founded the company and still owns the company today, by the way. He still is in business. It was her idea to have the artists sign their painted work, and she suggested that they use something like the Japanese chop marks, or perhaps she had some pieces at home of Ken Edwards' Tonala pottery in Mexico where they signed with an animal icon. And she also showed me an inherited sign Rookwood pot. She also brought in a plate one day. This is how innovative the decorators were. She brought in a plate that she had gotten at a flea market, incorporated its iris pattern into the SBCD designs. She loved irises, and of course she incorporated it, and as I said, it became very popular. She loves nature and has this to say about a flower. There is not just beauty and color. There is a subtle light that shines from within. Look closely at a petal of an iris. It sparkles as if it were made of diamond dust. There is strength and balance, a delicacy of line and form, a dance and flow of the leaves, a flouncing of ruffles in the petals. I am learning the inner song of nature. I try to give these feelings to my work. I think that just says it all.
Fantastic.
All about
beautiful.
The pottery, and many of the decorators expressed great love for their work and the inspiration they got from it.
Can you flip through some of the pages in the book, or you have another
Oh, yes.
mark here?
I have here, and we'll just show the viewers a little bit. You can see here, this is Suzanne McKenzie, who is seated here. I'm sorry, you can see her. She still works in pottery, and that is her waterlight pottery she does today. But this particular picture, if you look at it, has very fine line work. And she, of course, let me know that Arthur Rackham was the inspiration, who, of course, was a child illustrator, children's books, I should say, in England. And this is an African daisy in a very bright blue background. I think it's just lovely. And this is, I just talked about and read about Doree, who is here. And next to her is Itoko Takuchi Mayano, who was also one of the artists. And I think you can see a little bit better on the back one of her vases. And this is a line that she developed for the company. Again, she was a decorator and artist, and she referred to as Japanese pottery or waka. There is in the book actually a translation of the poem that is here on the vase. And you can also see the beautiful cobalt blue glaze and then the cherry leaves, blossoms, I should say, petals, not leaves, from the cherry tree, which is also very reminiscent of Japan.
Is this the iris right here, this one?
Oh, yes. This
There
is
we go.
a very good example of an iris. And I actually have, I think, in here a couple of, I just want to look again.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another depiction of bouquet. I don't know if you can see that or not, but collection of flowers was very popular later on in the company. Just looking to see if I have a nice
that's a
depiction.
nice
Oh,
example.
here's
Here,
some
that's
very
beautiful.
nice. Here's a good
That's gorgeous.
example of the purple iris that I talked about. It's almost botanical, the way it is drawn. And
Beautiful.
of course, the fine lines, the colors, the shading. The book discusses the early days when they used maybe 4 or 5 or 6 different glazes to a palette that was opened up around 1980-81 that became literally unlimited.
Mm-hmm.
They could do or use any kind of colors. And they mixed their own glazes. They did use some pre-mixed glazes,
Mm-hmm.
but they did a lot of that. So they would, there was the basic glaze, as I talked about, which would be put over the pot.
Mm-hmm.
And then into that basic glaze, which came, in big containers, they also could dip in there with their little cup, and they could mix in there the different minerals and formula that would produce the colors.
Mm-hmm.
And they would bring that little cup back to their work stand, and they would then proceed to paint. And of course, if you know anything about China painting, it takes hours and hours and hours to do. And it's not only very arduous, sometimes you even fire in between, but it is very particular handwork that is done, and done with a brush in this case. So that's a good one. This is, of course, calla lily. This was one of their standard, I'm sorry, that is not calla lily, that's a white iris. This is calla lily, I'm sorry, looking at it upside down, which was also one of their standard designs. But just beautiful, just absolutely beautiful. You know, I always tell people, think of Laura Ashley. Laura Ashley was very popular in the early 1980s, and of course, she incorporated all kinds of flowers, you know, into her design. So they were very timely. But Ray Marco was very aware of the trends and what was going on in the country at that time.
And you have to tell people that you're one of the photographers of the pictures in the book?
Yes, some of these photos I actually took. Some of them my husband took. He absolutely
Here's
loves.
an example that's not, it's a clock, and they're not just doing vases, but they're doing other things too.
Yeah, they moved into, this is a good example here, they moved into a more simple way, what they call slab work, just sheets of clay, basically, that were rolled out, and then they would decorate. This is Morning Glories, this, of course, is that design. And then, of course, you also have here clocks. And I have to tell you just a quick story. They were doing very well, but they were doing this very laborious, hard work, and over and over again doing the fine lines and the different glazes. And I think the income for the company was somewhere around $300,000. Well, when they went to slab work, just making and decorating and producing the clocks alone, their income, their profit went up like $3 million.
Wow.
I mean, this was so popular.
That brings us to another question I wanted to ask you. You did a lot of research about this unique company with artisans that grew. What did you learn, even though that wasn't your purpose at first, what did you learn about the economy, maybe something to help the American economy, from your experience here, what messages did you learn?
I learned quite a bit in researching, of course, the information about the company, and also learning about everything that went into. I had to learn not just distribution techniques and protocols, but also I was fortunate enough to get a business plan that they produced later on. I could tell.
And you actually saw invoices in the book. You had that in
yes,
the whole historical.
I gave a
aspect.
little smattering of this and that, what was really germane to try to depict how the company grew, developed in not just in the production, but also as a company. It was quite fascinating.
So what advice can you give to somebody who wants to have a business?
Well, today, if you have an idea, if you have a vision, if you have that, you are well on your way, I believe, to establishing a business. But do write a business plan. They did not in the beginning, and it really caused all kinds of problems early on. It was quite a challenge, particularly when the economy started to go south. So that is very, very important. Learn a little bit about that. But if you are artistic, if you have that spark, I say go for it. You just never know where that's going to lead. And let me tell you something, this company is still in business, but not under this line. It's in the top 20 of producers and importers of giftware in the country. He has made quite a success of himself and, of course, the company, and very popular. If you go into some of the gift stores in our area, you will see the Lolita martini and wine glasses, and that's all comes out of his company and his production. So he's all over the United States now.
Well,
but he had an inspiration.
An inspiration. Well, our time is up. You're welcome to sign one of these books off to me. You do that at
I'd
the
love
show
to.
because it's very
Jason,
important
thank you for the
for
opportunity,
authors.
too.
Thank you.
That was
for authors
very
to sign
nice
their
of
books.
you.
And I know you did a book signing at a store in California. I read about
Yes,
that.
I did. It became something that, very successful, and something that I wanted to do. Is very exciting.
To
I
be able
was
to
in
put
California
yourself
last
in
month.
the shoes of an author at a book signing.
Well, I'll have to do that. I'll have to sign it.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And thank you for being on the show.
And thank you so much. I really
It was
enjoyed
very
it.
educational, and I recommend this book. This is an amazing book.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think it's of interest to a lot of people.
It will be interest to
Yeah.
a lot of people.
Most of the people were alive. So this
you
is
mentioned that. I saw
very
that, yeah.
rare. Usually you have to go and dig into
people who made the
records.
history are
and
still there.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah,
So
antique dealers will be interested in this. People in history of American pottery, appraisers. It's just an amazing book. And artists.
it's fascinating. A little slice of Americana, let me tell you. Everything you can read about the beginning of the arts and crafts movement in this
I almost wanted
country.
to go out and buy
Not
one
the
now.
one in the latter part of the 19th century, but the one that actually started in the late 1960s when macrame weaving and pottery making and all of that really started, and the craft shows that people love to go to. They went to Santa Barbara Ceramic Design, went to Rhinebeck, New York, Park City, Utah. A lot of these shows are still going on today. There's a little history. There's not a lot of books out there about the history of that
I saw
movement.
that.
So I thought that was very
Well, yeah, I
interesting.
only about
Did a
3 or
little
4.
research.
About 3 or 4. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you too.
We'll hold the book up and show everybody.
Oh, please do. Thank you.
Others, so.
I'll finish my autograph then.
Thank you.
There we
Otherwise,
go.
they cut it off. It's like exactly 24 minutes, and you'll, like in the middle of a sentence, and it'll be cut
Doesn't
off.
matter. They cut it
know?
off. Sure.
You know,
Well, that's
it.
good. And they.
And so how...